Buddy, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show. This week, with no labels out, it's pretty clear who the biggest spoiler in the race is, and we'll get into that. And what does the Arizona abortion case mean for the election this year? Turns out, when Trump says leave abortion to the states, this is what happens. And as Joe Biden would say, Donald Trump did this. Alex, where should we get started?
Oh, man. So let's start with no labels just for a minute. We didn't really have a chance to get to it last week. I'm really wondering what is going to break while we're talking today. Well, it happened
right after we got done putting the show to sleep and to bed, and like 10 minutes afterwards, no labels said no mas.
Well, maybe this week we do RFK.
Yeah, well, that's where we got to go. But look, with no labels out, and by the way, it's not clear. I mean, they keep talking about how they're on 21 ballots, and they're not sure how they're gonna leverage that access, that ballot access. But it doesn't extend through 2020. You know, it's not like if you don't use it this year, it comes back automatically. So they are making some weird noises that we're gonna have to keep monitoring and making sure we understand. But assuming they really are out and they're pretty much dead in the water, which is a big, important step, it's now clear, that the biggest spoiler here is RFK Jr. And you don't have to take our word for it. You don't have to take our word for it because he says it and his staff says it out loud. I mean, they're publishing documents like how to get rid of Biden 101. And that's a quote, how to get rid of Biden 101, end quote. His New York State director, I know, again, you've all heard of Rita Palma, who said her number one priority was to get rid of Biden.
Also, and of course,
yeah, that's also a quote. And now they are, of course, the Kennedy campaign is saying that she's no longer with them. They're running away from her, but they can't run away from all the documents and the stuff that even RFK is saying he's a spoiler and that he's proud of it. We're getting to another quote from Rita Palma. Quote, the Kennedy voter and the Trump voter, our mutual enemy is Biden. If nobody gets to 270, Congress picks the president. So who are they going to pick if it's a Republican Congress? They'll pick Trump. And then she goes on, by the way, to say how that would be great because she might be disappointed. She's going to vote for Jr., but if she votes for him and Trump wins, that'd be fine. She wouldn't be upset at all, but we'd all be upset if Joe Biden won, she said. I mean, she's just, of course, and of course, she went to stop the steal rallies. The list goes on with these people. And, and then you have Trump, who basically has said, and allies are saying that he is quoting him as saying, I like Trump Kennedy. I like the way that sounds. There's something about that I like, unquote. I mean, this isn't that tough. And we keep talking about connect the dots. Timothy Mellon, one of Trump's mega donors, has given RFK's super PAC now, I guess, $20 million. Is that right, Alex? Is that number right?
No, $20 million.
$20 million
over the course so far. Yeah. And he didn't, and Joe, to your point though, he didn't just wake up and say, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm just going to give RFK Jr. $20 million. I mean, over time, $20 million. He was directed to do it, and he's doing it for a reason, which is
to be a spoiler for RFK. Make sure he's a spoiler for Trump. He's even talking like Trump. He set out a fundraising email calling J6 insurrectionists activists who had been stripped of their constitutional liberties. I mean, it's so obvious. And, Liz Smith summed it up on Twitter, I think, pretty succinctly. She's over at the DNC and is leading from the DNC side, the effort to take on RFK Jr. and the third parties. And she tweeted that, one, RFK Jr. was recruited to run by Trump allies like Steve Bannon. And that's true. Bannon was like pumping this guy up and pushing him to run for months and salivating, all excited about it. And actually said that he should be recruited. And these are the quotes. he thought on his show, Bannon talked about RFK would be great if he ran because it would be the perfect chaos agent for Trump. And he'd make a great VP for Trump. And then 2, she said, RFK Jr. is being propped up by Trump's biggest or largest donor. Again, go back
Which
to
we talked about,
Timothy Mellon. Yeah. 3, RFK Jr. provides cover to Trump on issues like January 6th. Yep, they're activists stripped of their constitutional liberties. So he'll cover for him there. And 5, that equals RFK Jr. equals spoiler for Trump. So you look at this stuff, and so the problem here is RFK Jr. is not any threat to be president of the United States. He's not even a threat to win a single state. Okay, not going to happen. The problem here is, again, if you look at the 6, 7, 8 states that are going to matter here, and we know, Arizona last time, just over 10,000 votes was the difference between Trump and Biden winning that state. Georgia wasn't much more than that. I think maybe 14,000 votes. And you had Pennsylvania, which was larger. But, then you go even to North Carolina, where Biden lost North Carolina by 74,000 votes. You have Nikki Haley getting something over like 200,000 votes in the primary there against Trump. So you see those numbers lining up. And yeah, that's where RFK Jr. could mess things up. Every single poll I've seen, I know, Alex, you've looked at a bunch of them too, says the same thing, that any third party, and including RFK Jr., I know some people think he'll hurt Trump. Not going to happen. The reality is the people who love Trump are not coming off of him. Ron DeSantis figured that out. There's a whole slew of Republicans that have figured that out. And they're not coming, if they're anti-vax, they're not coming out for Kennedy because he's anti-vax. Donald Trump shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue. His people will shrug and think, and say he must have had a good reason, and they'll do the same thing here. They're not coming off of Trump for Kennedy. In every one of the polls, regardless of whether it's West or Stein, no labels, or Kennedy, the movement comes from Biden voters, the people who, frankly, a lot of them don't like either one of them, but if they had to choose between Trump and Biden, they choose Biden. But given a third party, they move away. And we're not talking about tens of, hundreds of, millions of people here. We're talking about 50,000 people in North Carolina do that. And it's the difference between Joe Biden actually being able to potentially win North Carolina this time, particularly given the incredibly insane candidates they have statewide on that ballot in North Carolina. So, that's the whole problem.
For anyone who wonders so you go back to 2016, Jill Stein was one of the reasons Hillary Clinton ended up losing a fairly close race. We can do shows and shows about why she lost that race, but that she was a bit of a spoiler. She's trying to do it again now, obviously. Calling her a Russian agent is probably underselling it, if anything, at this point. But you go back, anyone who's like, this can't happen, just go back to 2000. Look at Florida, look at how small a margin it was, and look at everyone who voted for Ralph Nader. This is something that has happened before in American politics.
But she's not the only one doing Russia talking points. I mean, a lot of people
Trump
in the
is half the Republican Party.
Trump's
3/4 of the Republican Party is.
And RFK Jr. is doing it, which is more cover for Trump, right? He's not outside the mainstream. RFK Jr.'s out there saying Ukraine's a bad idea and, let Russia have it. So I just think, it's clear. And by the way, we've been saying this, none of this is a coincidence. There is not a coincidence that Steve Bannon literally recruited RFK Jr. to be a chaos agent for Trump. And then one of Trump's biggest donors gave RFK Jr.'s super PAC millions. And then you have people within the campaign writing memos about how to get rid of Biden 101 and saying that they don't really care if RFK Jr. wins or not. as long as it helps defeat Joe Biden. So this is not like, oh, those are just some dots out there. No, this is the Trump campaign went to school. They lost. They got 46% of the vote in 2016, and they won with 46% of the vote. In 2020, they got 7/10 more, 46.7% of the vote, and lost. And that's all we're talking about, folks. We're talking about 0.7% of a vote there was the difference between winning in 2016. He actually got a higher percentage in 2020 and lost. Why? Because in 2020, the third parties were very weak, much weaker than they were in 2016. So you needed to get close to 50 or over 50 to win in 2020, and Joe Biden did. He got 51% of the vote. And by the way, still so far the only person who stood on the ballot against Donald Trump and defeated him, so much so that Trump spent years now lying about it. But my point here is that that's what the Trump campaign went to school on. They went, okay, what worked in 2016? Why didn't we win in 2020? Oh, surprise, it's third-party strength. That's why you're seeing No Labels was out there. That's why you're seeing Cornel West. That's why you're seeing Jill Stein. That's why you're seeing RFK Jr. and the money flowing from Trump donors to RFK Jr. It's all because they understand that the press doesn't get it. Till recently, I'm not even sure the Biden campaign got it, but they've gotten it now. But what no one really got was that the Trump campaign has been doing this the whole time. They have been actively out there propping up third-party candidacies, knowing full well that they need a 46-46 race. They can't win a 46.7, 51 race. Biden will win that. Enough of the double haters will stay in the booth and vote for Biden. So how do you break up the anti-Trump vote? Simple. Get behind RFK Jr. And make him a spoiler that works for Trump. That's what this is all about.
Well, to your point about the media, this is actually, it's either, by the time you're hearing this, it's either I think it was Wednesday's New York Times. And this was a piece bylined by basically all their big presidential reporters, many of whom are generally pretty sharp, the Maggie Habermans of the world. In this article, I'm just going to read this to you. A person briefed on other polling by Trump allies said that while it varies by state, Mr. Kennedy also pulls more votes from Mr. Biden than Mr. Trump. Okay, yeah. So Trumpland knows, they have the data. Like you said, they've done the math. The next paragraph. Still, Mr. Kennedy is seen as more of a potential threat to Mr. Trump. It's like you have them saying they've done the math, etc. And then this broad phrase. Who says that? It is.
Yeah,
it's
we're
like,
not saying that. The Biden campaign's not saying that. The Trump campaign's not saying that. No one's saying that except the New York Times. Did they attribute it to anybody?
No, it's just an unattributed paragraph.
Yeah, this is what's crazy about how the press is covering this. Like, hey, we could lose democracy and become an autocracy, but But either side, could be right about this. It's all crap the way they're covering it. But anyway, we can yap on about this, but in the end, look, there's going to be a campaign waged in these 7 or 8 states, including, by the way, and I keep saying this, both North Carolina and Florida are in play now, particularly after Arizona that we'll get into. But so there's now 8 states that are potentially going to decide this election, and particularly in a place where there's now 8 states where any one of these third parties could be the spoiler that takes enough votes and creates that 46-46 race in that state that helps Trump. So over time, I'm sure that there will be a concerted campaign effort to make sure that the American people know that a vote for a third party, any third party, a vote for RFK Jr. is a vote for Donald Trump. But I also think the more amazing thing about the RFK campaign right now is that they're actually, again, their New York chair, who's now not their New York chair, basically said the quiet part out loud. She said that the whole thing was about creating a contingent election because if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Won some electoral college votes or could create a problem, that would send it to the House of Representatives. And then she said, in fact, that's one of the crazier quotes, but the truer one, that if it went to the House of Representatives and it's a Republican House, who do they think they're going to vote for? And she said, and she answered her own question. Well, they'll vote for Trump, and I'll be happy with that. So the whole crazy thing here is one, I don't think RFK Jr. can win a single electoral vote. But two, their whole position that he will, and when he does, it'll force it to the House, and that'll elect Trump. So they're admitting that they're a spoiler for Trump. And of course, none of this is front page news anywhere, right?
I will just say this, to a lot of us who've been paying attention, this is not the quiet part. For some reason, to most of the media, it is. So yeah, like you said, hopefully there'll be a more concerted effort to expose this and really make voters understand that you're not casting an alternative vote. You are casting a vote for Trump.
Yeah, well, like I said, look, the whole thing here, well, I'll get into this because I know we got a listener question, hopefully, that I can get into about this. But let's move on.
All right, Joe. So this is the other big thing this week. Trump attempting to, I don't know if you want to call it a pivot on abortion, what he's been saying. First, he said he's not for a national abortion ban. Then he's saying, let's leave it to the states. And he keeps going back and forth. And like, where is the truth here?
It doesn't matter. I mean, he's not going to get out of this one. Okay. He is responsible, keeps claiming the personal responsibility for killing Roe v. Wade. He's all,
Oh, yeah. He did just say that again. Yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, even his let the states decide, let the people decide. Okay. Alabama decided to ban IVF. Arizona's now decided to go back to 1864 the time when you could own slaves and when women couldn't vote. That was when that law was put in place. That's how draconian it is, and what an almost complete and absolute ban. Only if you can interpret Life of the Mother in the way it's written would that happen. With the only exception, there is absolutely no way to put this back in the bottle. And I said this, I think, on the strategy session with Rick Wilson and Stuart Stevens the other night. The problem for Trump, and I think this will destroy him, what I'm about to say, is that I said that he, if you go back to, if your only tool is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And with him, he only has one tool, and it's always a sledgehammer. And so he can bang away a sledgehammer on the open borders, on build the wall, on ban abortion. These are all sledgehammers. They just energize his MAGA base. It's like the guy in the carnival with that big sledgehammer, banging it down and trying to drive the mallet up to strike the bell and ring it. And he rings it loud and hard for his base, and they love it. And the problem now is there's no sledgehammer for him that works on this one. He doesn't have a scalpel. He doesn't have nuance. He can't do it. He'll never pull that off. The only tool Donald Trump has is a sledgehammer, and that's not going to work on this. And by the way, so far, every time the American people in any of these states had something on the ballot or an election in which abortion was, post Dobbs, the Republicans and MAGA have not in any way, shape, or form figured a way to deal with it and have suffered the wrath. And they're going to do it again. And the more Trump is out there talking about this and trying to wiggle his way out, the worse it's going to be for those members of Congress and districts that Biden won in some of these states, like Florida, where they have a 6-week ban. and there's now abortion is on rights and freedom is on the ballot there. Trump has fallen 5-6 points in Florida since that happened, and that was prior to Arizona. And we keep talking about this, but in North Carolina, where now with Florida having a 6-week ban, if you're in North Carolina, you have to travel up towards, you have to go to Virginia, I think, to have any ability to have reproductive freedom and rights. And so, and even that is, with Youngkin not exactly secure. So I just think that what's happening here is like North Carolina, for example, their crazy gubernatorial candidate who says he wants to go back to a time was whimsical about wanting to go back to a time when women couldn't vote. Their superintendent of instruction, statewide education candidate out there calling for the execution of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And then on top of that, these bans that are going into play, the Arizona, going back to 1864, Florida next door, a 6-week ban, Alabama doing the IVF ban, and the craziness there. I think, Biden only lost North Carolina by 74,000 votes. Nikki Haley did pretty well there, with a lot of people saying that they'd vote for Biden over Trump that had voted for her. And you can make all those arguments about, some of those were people that would have voted for Biden anyway. I just think the things are lining up that the Trump sledgehammer and the MAGA crazy candidates like Carrie Lake that's out there trying to run away from this ban in Arizona when she was literally for it, calling for it, like, in the last election, proudly. So, it's just crazy. It's not going to work.
Well, and it's not just the Senate too, right? You look at the House. I mean, and this is where I kind of think whoever came up with it, and for our listeners who don't know it, it's called the Republican Study Committee. I think it's not that. Yeah. Republican Study Committee. And it's almost like it was founded like by a Democratic plant just to get them to sign on to the craziest possible, like most out of touch positions. Like, I mean, in the last couple of weeks, it's cut Medicare, cut Social Security, cut Medicaid. And then they've all signed on to the Life Begins at Conception Act, which even if the title isn't a clue, in it, it's like banning,
this is like
banning IVF, banning almost all contraception, banning abortion completely. Like, list goes on. And they're like, this is a majority of House Republicans. Like they're making this very easy for us.
No, and the Biden response has been incredibly good. I mean, Trump saying it's states' rights, and Biden responded saying, no, it's about women's rights. I mean, you cannot, and we already know, look, they've been losing women, and that gap, the gender gap, is just increasing. Yeah, they are winning some men back. They're increasing the margin with men, but they're getting crushed with women.
Well, that's where I do want to just point out. I realize they're not doing any of this by accident. They have done the math, but I keep thinking that he is in real trouble on the right on some of these things.
Well, they're never satisfied,
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, so now, and we'll zoom out in a minute, but okay, they've got Rose done. Trump's crowing that he's killed it. Okay, you're seeing what's happening on a state by state basis. You know better than most, Joe, and like you point this out, they are never the pro-life movement is constantly pushing for more. They are never satisfied. They are a single issue block. And ultimately, a lot of them don't really care about any of the other issues or really even a party line other than who's the most pro-life candidate. And if Trump is waffling at all, you could easily see, okay, yeah, maybe he wins a few people back because he's got them conned into thinking he's not completely anti-abortion. But he could also be losing people to an RFK or to someone like that by really not even attempting to stay consistent.
Well, they're not. I mean, they'll never be satisfied, and he's never. He is never going to be able, I think, to cobble his coalition that he had in 2016 together. That's why I think to I've said this before. I think his ceiling is not 46%. I think it's dropped. And we'll see if he can bring people back in, but he can't straddle on this issue. First of all, no one will believe it, but I agree. He may be doing damage with the real, the real pro-life abortion is murder. What do you mean you're not going to come through with a national ban like you promised us, kind of people, but, we'll see. But he's in trouble for a lot of, it's the combination, right? It's the combination of saying, hey, it's the state's decision. And then having these states do all these crazy, really, things that like no one, big swaths of America go way too far. And he's going to have to defend it. So when he goes to Florida, are you for the 6-day-week ban? No. Well, then what about Ron DeSantis? How's he going? How are they going to maneuver this? How's Rick Scott? You saw him.
Yeah, he was so jumpy. I can't remember the interview. It was incredible.
He just trying to run away from this. This is their Senate candidates, their House candidates, Trump himself waffling on this. We always look. I've said this before. 2022, the economy was far worse than it is today. Inflation was far worse than it is today.
9%. Yeah.
Yeah. All that. The big red wave should have been coming. It didn't come. Why? Dobbs, crazy MAGA, the whole thing. They're crazy candidates. I'm just saying that you look at all this stuff and, so we got to be worried about yes, we do have to be worried about the economy. Yes, Biden has to keep explaining and talking about and understanding lowering costs, et cetera. But those things, if we end up fighting this, if this is a referendum on the economy, then folks, I'll be the first one to tell you, Joe Biden's going to lose. But by the way, if it was a referendum on the economy in 2022, there would have been a big red wave. So I see no signs that that's what the referendum, that's what this race is going to be about. One of the things about when you're a campaign manager, you learn really early on, you win by fighting on the policy turf that you want to fight on. They want to fight on the border and the economy. But what's happening through their own stupidity, their own cult behavior, their own crazy cravenness to go back to a time that, first of all, not sure it ever existed, but that's in their, in their fever dream.
They probably loved slavery. Just so we're clear, they definitely loved slavery.
But they want, because of all that, they're helping to make this just as they did in 2022. Make this about their extremism, about their bid to take control of your life and make you do it their way. And that is turf they cannot win on. It's not where the country is. And in the end, that cross pressure between those two things, I'm worried about the economy and, oh my God, these people are going to destroy America and end my rights and my freedoms. So far, every time that's been the contrast, enough Americans have chosen door number one, democracy, freedom and rights, not anger, hatred, divisiveness, and going and taking us backwards. So I just think in the end, that's why Trump is in trouble, because he's unleashed all this stuff. He, as Joe Biden would say, Trump did this. And there's no way he's going to be able to walk away from that.
So I think we want to get to one quick question before we end, Joe. I think I know what you're going to say, but this is from Marcy in New York, and it's real simple. Could it be? Is the Biden panic diminishing?
Yeah. I think it is, but that's not. I think it's becoming clearer that as I was saying about the sledgehammer for Trump, I think this has always been about Trump's sledgehammer But as Ron Brownstein would say, the trail of breadcrumbs.
Oh, no, not again. You said it 9 episodes in a row.
I know, but it's that. No, what I'm saying is that's the difference. That's the fight. This guy's going to do a sledgehammer. Every time he uses it, he knocks more breadcrumbs loose. There are going to be a lot of women in Arizona.
Okay, we'll allow that one. We did get a couple questions. We do have listeners tracking how many times you use that quote a week.
That's okay. I told people, I know, okay, people don't like it when I repeat myself. When you're right, first of all, the one thing you got to do, understand about this business, about any of it, and by the way, Trump and MAGA get it, repeat it and say it again and do it again. This isn't like, hey, oh, he's wrong on this, and you say it one time. This is in my view, this race has come down to Donald Trump and his damn sledgehammer. And every time he wields that thing, it knocks a few more breadcrumbs out. And we got a whole lot of breadcrumbs we got to go get and collect and bring home to get to 54. And this is where Simon and Rosenberg and I differ slightly. I think Simon keeps talking about getting to 55. I don't think 55 is doable, but I do think getting to 50 and getting into the low 50s is doable. And yeah, people may get tired of me saying this too, but the biggest threat to that number is still third parties.
This is from Christopher. And I think if listening to the last half hour, I think I know what your answer is going to be. But Christopher asks, is there any long-term plan for Republicans, like at all?
No. Yeah, they have one plan. They get that they have won the popular vote one time in like election after election after election. You have to go back to the 80s before, except for the one exception, and that was 2004 when W was running for re-election. Because in 2000, Gore won the popular vote. In 92, Clinton won it. In 96, Clinton won it. Gore won it in 2000. You keep going. 2004 against Kerry was the only time, and that was a Republican running for re-election, and then it's over again. 2008, 2016, 2020, 2012, all of them. So they figured it out. They cannot win an election unless they play the cards that they are playing. They intend they know that if they can win this time, it's because of the Electoral College. It's the only way they have a shot. It's the only way that's happened. Then this is this is the one where they have to change the rules, and they'll still be calling it a democracy, but they're already working on it. I mean, they're already working on 2025, Project 2025. They're already doing things to limit ballot access and to make it tougher to vote, because that's what they're going to have to do to stay in power. And that's why so many of them love this guy talking about he wants to be a dictator on day one, because that's their plan, folks. That's what they want. It's not only what they want. You ask, well, why is that guy going along with this? Why is that one going? Why aren't they raising the alarm? Because they need this to happen or they're all gone. So they keep a lot of them go along with it for their own self-interest. And those people who want the tax cuts and want to tear down every regulation, corporations who want to take down regulations, billionaires who want to, in the EPA or whichever department they hate the most, that's putting that's actually making it so your drinking water doesn't have PFAS in it. They want that crap all gone. And they know they got one shot and one shot only now. And it's funding spoilers, doing anything they can to win this time. And then they're going to dismantle all of it. That's their goal. That's their plan. And that's the only plan they've got.
Well, that is a good place for us to end. Sorry, Christopher. It was a really good question. I'm glad we got to get to it.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to that Trippi Show. Thanks for listening to me repeat myself, evidently. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show. Leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen, and leave some breadcrumbs that others could follow to find this podcast. Thank you very much. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question and a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.
Resolute Square.